What's New in .NET with Paul Sheriff.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host. Make sure to check out www.azuredevops.show for the past episodes and show notes. And for you first-time listeners, the goal of this podcast is to empower you and your team with the information that you need to move fast, deliver consistent quality using the .NET ecosystem, and run your software systems with confidence in Azure. And for those of you running .NET and Azure user groups, I've been doing a lot of online video presentations, and if you run one of these groups, I'd love to give a presentation for you. Our sponsor is my company, ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient and able to deliver world-class results. And so if we can help, please get in touch. And if you are a .NET developer and like a path to become an architect, we are hiring. Just apply on the website, clearmeasure.com, and 4 positions are open at the time of recording. The guest today is Paul Sheriff, and he has over 30 years of experience architecting information systems, and his expertise is in much demand from Fortune 500 companies. Paul is a top-notch instructor, a Pluralsight author. He's published 300 plus articles and authored over 14 books on topics ranging from C#, SQL Server, and many .NET technologies. Paul has 20 courses, or more than 20 courses, in the Pluralsight.com library on topics ranging from Angular, MVC, WPF, XML, jQuery, Bootstrap, more. And he also speaks at a lot of different conferences and user groups around the world. Paul is a business technology expert consultant, and can be reached at psheriff@pdsa.com. That's PSHERIFF at pdsa.com. Paul, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Hey, thanks, Jeffrey. I'm doing great. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy out there.
Absolutely. And it was way back in episode 77 that we last had you on the show, so people can go back and listen to that back in the archives as well. But, you know, people have been talking about .NET 5 and .NET Core, and a lot of good stuff is coming up. You're doing some teaching strategy on how to best get this content out there. What are you looking at? What does the landscape look for you, given the new .NET 5 release and all the things that were announced?
Yeah, interesting times as usual. I mean, Microsoft always keeps us on our toes, that's for sure. Over the years, they want to change things every year on us. But, I think if people are still using the .NET framework, again, Microsoft has said there's nothing wrong with that. If it's working fine for you, they're still going to support it for many years to come. But, we also need to look to the future, and we got to look at what's going to be changing. How are you going to be doing applications coming up in the next few years? And should you be thinking about a migration strategy? And that's really, I think, the core of everything right now is, and I don't care what technology you use, you always have to be thinking about what is my migration strategy. And I think Microsoft has gotten a lot better about that over the years. I mean, you remember way back when, going from VB6 to .NET and then from .NET 1 to 2, they didn't give us a lot of guidance. They didn't give us a lot of help. They thought they did. Most of us thought they failed miserably on that. But these days, I think they're doing a lot better. Now, when you think about moving from .NET Framework to the .NET Core, for instance, a lot of it very similar, which is great. A lot of new concepts in some areas, but the majority of it is still .NET, which is wonderful, right? Now, of course, what did they do? They kind of left some of the VB guys behind again with .NET Core, but now we look at .NET 5, and what are they doing? They're adding it back in. We're now going to have Visual Basic support. So thank God, right? I mean, we needed that. I think they got enough of an outcry. for that. So that's a good thing. I mean, I'm primarily a C# guy these days, but back in the day, I made my living doing Visual Basic, and I still have a couple of clients that still do Visual Basic. So obviously they're happy that they're now seeing that migration path forward. So, I like the C# enhancements and everything they've announced here with the .NET 5X too. So
the VB thing is really interesting because it's such the language, just going back to all the different flavors of QBasic and Basic A, and that before even Visual got added to the name. I've got one early client from 1997, 98 still running a VB script active server pages application, and hey, that may be a better upgrade path if they're adding it back in.
Yeah, I remember those days, that's for sure. But I think it's important, and Microsoft, I think, finally realized that it is important that they help people migrate forward. And, now they're not making any like big language changes to Visual Basic, like they're doing with the C#. The C#, that language just keeps growing and becoming more rich. But the VB, they're going to kind of leave the language in place for now, just get the all the bits moved up to .NET 5. And then maybe in .NET 6, maybe we might see some additional language enhancements, maybe, give us a little bit of parity with the C# stuff. So we'll see what happens. I mean, that's another year away, right? Because aren't they going to go on a yearly thing now every November? I think it was, they announced.
They did commit to that there's going to be a major release, at least a major release every year, with every other year being the long-term support. So that means that .NET 6 next November is the long-term support, and that when .NET 6 comes out, support for .NET 5 ends, but they promise that it'll be a trivial upgrade to 6.
Right. So, and that's great, because again, I think they kind of did leave some developers behind in some cases. And I think people were feeling like, oh, wait a minute, I've just invested all these, how many years have we had it? Like 20 some years now of .NET. So now we think that, the .NET framework is now going to be legacy. Well, a lot of people are like, wait a minute, I've just done 20 years of this. Why is it now legacy? But with the .NET 5, I think people are seeing that, okay, it's not such a huge deal, right? That it is still closely mimicking the .NET framework, and they'll be able to move to it and then get all these additional enhancements too, which is great. I think Microsoft is doing a better job these days.
Yeah. I was having one conversation, a developer who really liked that they went with .NET 5 instead of .NET Core 4 or something like that, because he said, I'll just be able to tell my boss, oh yeah, we're just going to take our .NET 4.8 applications and we're going to upgrade to the latest release .NET 5. Whereas because the name is just a version, the manager who doesn't really know the changes doesn't have to be, in this developer's opinion, unnecessarily worried. Whereas if it was just called .NET Core 4, then it's like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? What's changing? And
right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of developer managers don't know that if they haven't kept up with technology. But, and Core was, there were some significant differences there. There really was. And I think 5 will bring it back a little bit. I mean, there's still a lot of differences. There's still a lot of, new things you can take advantage of, which is great, and I happen to like .NET Core. I think it's a lot of things around the MVC were just so much simpler than using MVC in .NET Framework, for instance. So those type of things I thought were great. And luckily, a lot of those will, of course, carry over into the .NET 5. So that's what I'm excited about. I think that's kind of a neat, thing that they did. So I'm excited. Mm-hmm. I'm excited.
Well, one of the interesting things to me is with .NET 4.8, WPF and WinForms apps, they could have been stuck with .NET Framework, but then they found a way. And so you can now write brand new .NET Core or .NET 5, brand new .NET 5 WinForms apps, native desktop apps you've seen so many different seasons of different types of applications. What's your thought on Windows desktop applications going forward?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, when you think about the technology stack that we've had over the years, I mean, I go back to the mainframe. Okay, that's how old I am. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because the mainframe, we had, thin client, right? And everything was done on the server. Then what happened? We got into, the personal computer comes out, and everybody now starts writing these powerful desktop apps that take advantage of that computer. And we did that for many years. And then, what was it, late 90s, the internet really starts to take off. And what did we do? We went back to the mainframe. Really, when you think about it, we went back to the mainframe because the browser was just a dumb terminal, wasn't it? So, we're kind of like, and now that's kind of taken off, but still enough people have had enough business necessity to stick with WinForms or WPF. Hopefully they went with WPF. I think that's a much better desktop platform. Okay. So there could be a whole nother wave as people can't do what they need to do on the web. If they you think about certain things you can't do interacting with machines, right? You need a physical cable to be able to get, and you got to get outside of the sandbox that the browser puts us in. So if you got to communicate at the machine level, developing cache machines or interacting with, certain printers or something like that, or, the 3D printing type of thing, right? Those are things that until we get some other technologies, it's going to be still a little difficult to do in a browser. So there are going to be needs for those types of things. So that's where I think the desktop applications are still going to be prevalent. Now, of course, you can do, a lot of that with the Windows 10 apps, the universal apps, right, of course. And there's certain things, actually, you can even do some credit card interfaces now. I think we did one, what was it, with Signal R, I believe, way back when. So, there are things you can still use to connect up to certain devices, even through a browser. But it can be a little bit of a challenge. So, I mean, I used to love doing desktop apps. I thought they were great. I love WinForms. In fact, I still have a WinForm client, or not a WinForm, but a WPF client that I work with currently. Because they are doing heads down data entry. And for that, those types of people love desktop apps. They don't like the browser at all.
Yeah. Okay. Let's not stop there. Why? What is it about the love for the desktop app that they just don't get in the browser?
Because when you're on a desktop app, you can completely program that a lot easier to do everything on the keyboard. You never have to move your hand over to the mouse. Okay, desktop, when you talk, not desktop, but data entry people, their whole thing is how fast they can get stuff done. So it's all about keystrokes, and it's, how they got all the desktop app that is pure heads down data entry is using all the, the function keys. Okay. How do you program that on a web? It's more difficult. I'm not to say it's impossible, but it's more difficult to do. Okay. So usually you can get things done, but it's all about how fast somebody can get. And they've done, motion studies on this, and they know that every time they have to move their hand to the mouse, it's a problem. And so with a browser app, you typically at some point have to hit the mouse. Mm-hmm. So that's really what it comes down to.
That's a good point. That's I think a design skill that I don't see a lot of developers developing, and that's a question that's not asked a lot, which is how are people going to use this screen, this function, that function, and Gmail has showed us, hey, you can have some shortcut keys that are really useful in the browser, but yeah, you still are reaching for the mouse. And the Visual Studio extensions like ReSharper and CodeRush, what do? They make it to where we have to use the mouse less because we're programming. So we benefit from not reaching for the mouse.
Oh, absolutely. I use every keystroke hotkey I can because I hate going for that mouse as well, because I built up carpal tunnel over the years. And I've learned to I actually fixed it myself. I didn't even have to have surgery, but a lot of it was because of that mouse. So I trained myself to do everything I could on the keyboard. And yes, it's a skill. It is a design skill that a lot of people don't think about it until they have to. And I've always found that I can design and develop and deploy a desktop app quicker than I can a web app, okay, for something like that. All right. For, when I've got a serious heads down thing, I can do it much simpler because I'm in total control of that environment. I don't have to worry about 50 browsers, that I got to test on. So when you think about that, yes, moving to that desktop is still very important. And that's why Microsoft is keeping that stuff there. Let's not overlook the fact also that, okay, I consider myself even on the younger side, you do too, but there's still a lot of older workforce who just plain do not want to change. They want something that looks exactly like what they had for the last 20 years. And if it goes to a browser, they don't like it.
Yeah. Well, how many just auto mechanic shops, you kind of peek behind what they're using and there's no graphical, it could be mainframe, but it's probably ported from a mainframe. But either way, that keyboard, even covered with plastic, it's grease all over it. And, yes, I think they have mice there, but they're just jamming on the keyboard.
Right. And it's probably an old Fox Pro app or, a Clipper app or even a VB6 app that, is still running in a DOS window. So, yeah, no, it's different. But, I am glad that they are keeping those technologies in .NET 5. I think it is important.
Yeah. So many different classes of applications and classes of worker. Like if you need to create things, you're not reaching for your small tablet or your smartphone. You're trying to get as much screen real estate in front of you as possible because you got to make something, whether it's typing up a document or Photoshop or just a knowledge worker or data entry clerk. And then there's all the different things that you're just on the go. You just need a little tiny smartphone app. You need to give it a Siri command or a Hey Google command and go off to the races. And so there's no one size fits all software these days, but we do have these classifications emerging, it seems like.
What do you mean classifications as far as?
Well, the creation app, the on the go small app in your pocket. You just want to issue a quick command and then it communicates to the network. And then just the browsing stuff, click around in a web page. But you can do it all with .NET. Now, when you're strategizing right now for how to teach developers this new wave, right, with Pluralsight?
Well, one of the things, I help Pluralsight design paths. So on Pluralsight, you have paths. A path is made up then of several courses. So I've been helping them do a couple of those. There's a couple more that are going to be coming out. So I collaborate with, it's not just me, it's myself and other people. And our job is to help Pluralsight decide, should we be still doing .NET Framework classes? Should we be doing .NET Core classes? Should we be doing ones that show both? Should we be jumping on .NET 5, right? So we have to look at all of these things, and we also have to take into account the audience, okay? And this is something that I think Microsoft has done very well. When you think about it, they are taking into account their audience because they know that there are still people using WPF, they're still using Windows Forms, so that's why they keep them there. And it's the same thing with a teaching company like Pluralsight, where they say, well, who is our primary client? We have mostly enterprise clients. Okay, enterprise clients are slower to move to the newer technologies, aren't they? They can't afford to rewrite every 3 to 5 years. They want systems that are going to last 5 to 10 years because they need to keep their business going, and they don't want to just hire programmers all the time. Their job isn't programming. Their job is delivering a product or a service, right? So they want developers to be stable and to be able to put out apps quickly with technology they're familiar with, not always having to have a learning curve. Okay. And if some programmers quit and they have to hire new ones, they want to hire them with that technology stack. Well, that means that somebody needs to keep teaching that technology stack, don't they? Right? Even if it's a version or two behind where Microsoft is. So that's something that Pluralsight looks at. They say, okay, great. So we need a path around the .NET framework. We still need a path around .NET Core. And we're also going to need one around .NET 5. It won't be as many courses right now, currently today, but it will grow then in the future, won't it? And then some of those older paths will get retired, and they'll simply move the same courses up as long as they're still applicable technology. They'll move them up to the new version. So yeah, there's a lot people have to think about besides just, hey, a new version came out, let's jump on it. Where are you going to get the training from to do that? Where are you going to find your information? What's going to be the pilot project you're going to do, right? Because these are types of things you need to think about. And I find a lot of developers always just want to dive into the newest thing. And that's fine if you're, kind of on your own and you're an independent consultant and your client doesn't care what you write in. But for an enterprise, they have decisions to make. And they have to look at all of these factors before they jump on a new technology.
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery.
Yeah, it made me think that even either startup companies or companies that are building a new application should do what the enterprises are doing. It's just maybe the enterprises know that they have to be more intentional about it.
Right.
So what bad thing could happen if we just write it in the next new thing that comes along?
Well, okay, let's take a really good analogy. Blazor. All right, the new Blazor that's coming out, right? Mm-hmm. Come on, Jeffrey. When's the last time we saw a Blazor-like thing that is no longer around? It's called Silverlight.
Well, yeah, and Workflow Foundation's another one that's totally gone
There
now.
you go. Okay.
WCF is gone.
Yeah, exactly. So when that's the problem is people just want to jump on the newest thing. And I'm not saying that Blazor is going to go away by any means. I mean, it's gotten more traction than Silverlight ever had because it's actually WebAssembly. WebAssembly is being adopted by the other browser, most of the browsers out there, right? That's wonderful. Okay. Silverlight never had that. But people who jumped into that, right, without really thinking about the ramifications, and a lot of that's, I don't want to poo-poo on young kids, but a lot of times it is the young ones who haven't had the experience, right? I mean, I've been through, I can't even tell you how many different countless technology stacks I've been through. And I've learned from experience what to look for and when to jump into it, when something is considered mature enough. And I think that's really what it is. It's a maturity of that language. It's a maturity of that architect to know when it's time to jump into something. And it's planning, and it's all about planning. I love this old saying. It's my favorite saying. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And most people lack that ability to plan, I think. So.
Yeah. And what questions to ask during the planning process even. Right.
Exactly. And getting help. I mean, that's why people listen to your podcast. They're looking for guidance. There's always somebody smarter than you. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's a whole ton of people smarter than me. I've got a lot of experience and that contributes, but it's better if you can gather a whole bunch of smart people with experience, younger kids that might also be able to look at this technology and say, yeah, but did you consider that? And I said, I hadn't even dived into that. That's a great thought. Let's keep that on the table, for instance, right? So we all need guidance. We all need somebody to turn to, and then we can make our own decisions, right? What right or wrong, but at least you've maybe gone out, listened to some of your stuff, listened to other people, talk to some people with experience, and then you make that informed decision. And then you can present it to management and say, this is the way I think we ought to go because of these reasons. And if you can back that up, management's probably going to be more inclined to go along with you as well.
Yeah. There's one question, especially with people hosting their application in whatever service in Azure that people don't ask up front. And that is, what is my budget for running this in Azure? What is my monthly budget? What do I want my monthly budget to be running in Azure? And then tailor it as such, because you could, it's definitely correct, I think, to say that for the same application, your Azure bill is going to be less if you use WinForms and then connect to some APIs than if you say even ASP.NET MVC, where all the processing's on the server.
Right.
But that's a question, and then everybody gets surprised with an Azure bill.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I just went through that just about a month ago. I'll talk to you about this maybe later next year, but I'm starting a new business venture. And again, I'm setting it up on Azure. So I went through that exact process, and I went through their tools. Now, I'll tell you, I hadn't touched Azure in a while, and I was really impressed with their tools, how they give you so much guidance on if you do this, it's going to be less than if you do this. And they even do a cost analysis for you. And I was able to get it down to this, bare bones, where it's going to cost me like $40 a month to run this web server and a SQL Server for now, because I don't need it to be that powerful yet until I grow this thing, right? But it's great with Azure because I can just scale it up. It's easy, But yes, I went through that exact process just about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
And did you like the number? No, you don't have to answer that.
No, I thought it was great. Yeah, and I mean, $40 a month until we get rolling, and then probably we'll go up to 100 real quick, and that's great. Yeah. Hey, I want those problems. I wanted to get up where I'm paying $500 a month, right? If I've got that, I would absolutely love it.
We helped a client launch a new online system earlier this year in an insanely short time period, from the first line of code written to the first event in production was 3 weeks. And basically the prioritization was, we got to get this done. We got to get it running. We are going to pay Azure a lot, but it's going to be worth it. And the first month's Azure bill was $5,000 just for that application. Wow. But for these event-based, it was event-based software, so high scale swarm type of usage pattern, and just automatically scaling up and whatnot. It was worth it, because the revenue just from that dwarfs what they paid to Azure.
Right.
And then over the next couple of months, application gets tuned, and now it's a $600 per month.
Right.
So it's great to have that flexibility, but it's a decision, and you kind of design to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like for me, it was a decision. I wanted to use .NET Core. I'd kind of played with .NET Core over the last couple of years, but I was really waiting. I was not going to jump into .NET Core 1.0. Why? Well, because I've been through too many 1.0 stuff with Microsoft. I knew there was no way I was going to touch it.
Yeah.
Right. 2 is when I started, okay, yeah, I can kind of get into this. And then 3, I decided, I'm going to really start jumping into this now. And so I made that decision because I didn't want to wait for .NET 5. I didn't know when it was coming out because, like I said, this was like a month ago. And, it was getting there, but I didn't want to wait, and I didn't want to do it on beta because this is going to be a real production thing. But, I went through those decision points that I talked about. I talked to other people, and I said, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And that's how I made that decision, and then, hey, I'll be able to bring it up to .NET 5 when I want, but tell you the truth, probably wait till .NET 6.
Yeah, that's kind of smart. The first versions of .NET Core, they were even thinking about changing the project files and the project system. And then they came back and said, no, too many things are tied into CS Proj.
Right.
And so they came back to it. But yeah, there's a lot of big ideas, and they realized, okay, we can still do those big ideas by changing less.
Right.
Which is good, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's all these things that we're always having to think about. And, I love .NET. I love the .NET ecosystem. I think it's very rich. You can get things done so quick and easy. And like you, I also launched this new product that I'm working on, this business venture. I did it. I wrote the whole thing in 3 weeks by myself. Now, it's not huge. It's a simple thing, but it was, to me, I was like, wow, that's really great, because I did all of this, and I did it. And really, like I said, I didn't know Azure that well because I hadn't touched it in a long time. So that was also my Azure learning curve. And, I felt, wow, that's really neat. If I can jump into this like this and learn enough that I can get, a site set up. Now, I knew SQL Server, of course, but, this to me that really spoke to the .NET ecosystem, that I'm able to learn and get something set up within a few weeks, just like you guys had to do. So pretty neat.
Yeah. So with you seeing so many things, where do you think things are going in just with the software world, the .NET ecosystem? What 10 years from now, what are you predicting, and what do you think will be safe investments versus?
I'm hoping 10 years from now I'm retired. So
yeah.
I'm just going to be traveling around the country in my RV, man. I'm going to stop
there you go.
But that's a tough question when you think about it. I think 5 years from now, it's going to look fairly similar to what we're doing now. Tell you the truth. I mean, unless we get some sort of radical shift in how people do things, but I'm still seeing the apps being very prevalent. I'm hoping to see more that you'll be able to write more in a single language or the language of your choice and be able to deploy it to multiple places, right? Easier. I mean, I know there's certain things you can do now, Xamarin and things like that help you do that. But there's still sometimes some little tweaks you need to make depending on the environment that you're going to deploy to. So I'm hoping we're going to see more around that. DevOps is a big one that obviously is now becoming very prevalent in the last couple of years here, or a few years. And I think that is going to continue to grow. And I think that has been something we've needed for a long time. Too many developers, all they think about is development. They don't think about what else needs to happen in the whole life cycle. And it's that life cycle that back when I first started, and gosh, when was that? Like, really early 80s, right out of college. I mean, you really had to think about the whole life cycle because you were involved in every piece of it. And as we've kind of gotten more things siloed where, okay, now we got those web server over here. Somebody else sets up the web server. I'm just going to work over here on my piece. I don't worry about how I deploy it. But how you write the code could affect how that guy has to set up the web server, and could be, speaking to your point, could be the difference between a $5,000 bill and a $600 bill, right, on Azure. Because if you don't program it right. So I think DevOps is going to be something that's going to continue to grow. I see it as a great thing because it's going to teach developers a little bit more about that whole life cycle and how to think about quality up front, how to do things smaller and, littler chunks and deploy things faster. I think that's so important because too many people get lost in these larger chunks of time that it takes them to do things. And not so many people, that's one of the reasons why people were moving towards Agile, right? Because they wanted these short sprints, which has always been a great idea. But you get a lot of guys who they don't know how to plan that way. So now I'm not a big Agile fan, I'll tell you that, but I think it had some great concepts that came out of it. And I think a lot of that's now being rolled into the DevOps thing. So I think the two of those kind of coming together, I think is making developers better.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, I want my team to move slower, or I'd like some more bugs,
right, or
I'd like it to go down more in production.
Exactly.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
No, probably not.
So everybody has the same goals.
Yeah. Yeah. But, the problem is not everybody knew how to get there, because if you think about, all right, one of the things down in here in Nashville, I'm in Nashville, and in Nashville, we have the Nashville Software School. And then Vanderbilt actually started this programmers boot camp thing. What they're doing is they're taking anybody, they can take an accountant, they can take, a housewife, doesn't matter. And they'll put them into this boot camp. And for 6 months, all you do is program. Mm-hmm. All you're doing is learn how to program. Okay. You might be doing some HTML, you might be doing some JavaScript. They probably do a C# course, or maybe they do a Java course, right? Okay. But that's all they've taught you. So now they release you out to go find a job. And now people are saying, well, what do you know about DevOps? And they've probably never even heard of what DevOps is. They don't know anything else around the whole application life cycle. So when you think about that, these schools are kind of doing a little bit of a disservice. They're taking their money, but not really giving them a full education. Then it's up to the company to now train them on how to do that. But they've gotten no experience on how to test, how to, deploy, any of that. They've it's just gone. Yeah. So I mean, it's fine. It's great that the companies are starting to do it, but I think we need to roll a little bit more of that back into the education of people.
Yeah. A few episodes back, James Grenning was on the show, and he talked about a lack of developers understanding how to finish software and make it so that the software runs completely without them.
That's a great point.
And he said it just so concisely and so well. And I kind of agreed with him. I just never heard it phrased that way. And it's true. If we're working on the next version of the application, we're still there to support the application. And it can be, we can be a little bit lazy because like, oh yeah, if that happens, okay, I'll fix it.
Right.
Versus no, you're not there. If something bad happens, there's consequences.
Right. I mean, I've always called that programming for the maintenance programmer. Because for me, I'm usually 9 times out of 10, you're the maintenance programmer.
Yeah.
And you got to think about, are you going to remember that code that you wrote 6 months ago? Probably not. So if you can put enough, comments in, if you can put maybe data drive some things, right? So put more things into configuration files or configuration tables even, so that if something comes up and the client says, hey, I want to change that on the screen or change this, all you have to do is go into a configuration file, not go back and revisit the code. So it's things like that again, they're not teaching. And for me, everything goes back to teaching. I've been teaching for over 30 years, and I've written so many articles, and I love teaching. I love imparting knowledge to people, and I just find that there's so many topics that people have missed when they go to school. Things like this, data-driven, type of program.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things where, and it's hard when you're in a 6-month boot camp, to get everything across. You can't.
Right.
There's no way. And I mean, I don't want to sound like a snob, but when I had I had a consulting company kind of like yours, and I had 16 people. But when I was hiring people, I would ask them, or actually I'd check their resume. They had to have a 4-year degree for me to work at my company. They had to have a 4-year degree. If they didn't have it, I wasn't going to hire them. And that may be a little short-sighted sometimes, but I found that those were the guys that had a little bit more well-rounded experience, and I could then teach them quicker into my way of doing things, but they at least had all the fundamentals there.
So last question, there's things that developers need to know. And then there's enterprise companies that use the Pluralsight catalog that are looking for certain courses and whatnot. If the customers were there, what course does Pluralsight not have that you wish that you could produce because developers need it, but you're just not sure of the market, but they absolutely need it?
That's a fantastic question. And I've actually had a lot of courses that I have proposed to Pluralsight turned down. They didn't want them because they didn't fit in to what they thought their people were looking for. But again, you're right. People don't know that they need these things, right? Okay. I think things like, how to data drive things, how to eliminate hard coding, how to design. Well, actually, they may have this one, but how to design for testing. Okay. That to me is a huge thing. I mean, we can teach how to unit test code that you've already written, but are we really teaching how to design your code in such a way that it will make it easier for testing? Okay, now that one, I haven't looked at all of their library because they have over 5,000 courses now. They keep buying other companies, so it's huge. But it's things around. I think it's more around how to write maintainable code, how to write testable code, how to write or how to understand the whole life cycle of development. I think that would be just a great overview class that you could go through and talk about each of the different steps, the skill set required that you must have to do each one of those steps. I think would be also very valuable. So things like that, I'd have to think about that more, and I might now. That's kind of a neat thing to think about.
Yeah. Aaron Sconard, if you're listening.
Yeah. Come on, Aaron, buddy. Help me out.
Awesome.
Aaron's a great guy.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, Paul, thanks for coming back on the show. It's always great catching up with you. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. This is always fun, Jeffrey. So maybe we'll do something, early next year again. That'll be fun.
Great. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.